Mates, good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, September 23rd, 2021, and I'm over once again at the Stump Pass Beach State Park. I mean, at this point, for those of you, it may not even surprise you that I'm visiting here. I just like to visit here because it's one of the closest parks to my homestead, so that's why I come here quite frequently. And since it's a relatively small state park, it doesn't take too much time of my day, especially after work, for instance. But as part of today's video, I want to focus upon another piece of wildlife that's found in Florida. So without further ado, let me introduce the Black Vulture, which are basically perching along the snag, which also is described as a dead tree. Now, black vultures are a type of vulture. However, though, they are not the same thing as a turkey vulture. The difference between the two has to do a bit with their anatomical features. Turkey vultures are slightly larger, and typically their heads are red. But unlike with the black vulture, their heads are black and their face is wrinkly too, as they age, of course. So based on their size up on the snag, they are adults. And with that being said too, they are described as detritivores. Now, for those of you who aren't really sure what that means, some of you may be like, what the heck does that mean? Basically describes an animal that eats leftovers. So, in this case, they usually try to look for a carcass, whether it be roadkill or even an animal that's been hunted by people. But they're usually black vultures. They try to be like the first responders to whenever there is a carcass, just because they try to get as much as they can in terms of food. Now, think of it this way. Black vultures are like those kids in school where they are in the lunch line and they try to be one of the first people, or one of the first ones to get the food, and they'll try to eat any leftovers from others as well. So in a sense, I can really relate to it because back when I was in junior high school, I would typically scavenge anyone else's food that they didn't want. Now, it's just funny to think about because some of my mates, they'd be like, "Hey, Bryce, you want some of this?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" But that was the thing, like, my appetite has always been huge. And plus, at that time, when I was younger, I used to be a distance runner. I was in cross country and track, so I did distance running. So having that food, it would always get burned off within one practice or meet. But going back to what I was mentioning, they typically will have only up to like 2 eggs most of the time, and usually, like where they cohabitate or live, they kind of like to be in semi-open areas. So what that basically means is some of the area would be like grassland or sand, like the coastline. But then they also like that habitat that has a little bit of covering, you know, like the foliage around me, somewhat forested. Because that's the thing. They try to avoid completely open areas because that makes their eggs very prone to predation. So they try to protect their eggs as much as they can in the process. Yeah, they're just, right now, they're just observing at the moment, taking a little rest from flying, And oftentimes, when I was mentioning about their scavenging abilities, they're typically the most aggressive too. Oftentimes, if there are turkey vultures already at the carcass, the black vultures will try to scare them away, intimidate them. Be like, hey man, that's my food. That's what I want. Get away, get out, find something else. That's basically their mentality. They try to act like bullies to any other fellow homies. Yeah. But typically, black vultures, they like to be in groups. And the more black vultures there are in a group, the more aggressive they'll become. It's kind of like that feeling of invincibility. Like, oh, since I have other fellow mates with me, we can do more together. And we'll be more intimidating as opposed to it being by themselves. Now, oftentimes when they fly, they're frequent gliders too, and they really like to thrust as well. So they like to use the wind to their advantage. I mean, most birds do that in general. But typically they also fly very high into the sky as well. Probably up to 100 feet or more. Because that really gives them that ability to really scope out the area that they're flying over, so that they can have an idea of what food is nearby. And oftentimes they rely on their sense of smell. So it's highly likely that their sense of smell is way better than ours. So for all I know, they could probably smell me right now. Like, man, he's quite sweaty. You can really smell the salt coming off of him. Yeah, you can frequently find these in Florida. And what's surprising too is you oftentimes don't find them too often along the beaches. You may even find them usually a bit more inland. So this is actually quite a pleasure to see them right now. Especially given the fact that that nest right there, that doesn't belong to them. That actually belongs to an osprey. Now, I think what it's doing right now, that one right up there, is kind of like spreading its wings. They do that sometimes to basically bake their wings in the sun so it can kill off any bacteria coming from the carcass that they may have fed off of recently. That's a common characteristic. But yeah, most of their distribution, though, as I did mention, is in the southeast United States. Yeah, that's a piece on the Black Vulture for you guys. And yeah, as always, I mean, they are essentially the scavengers. And oftentimes they are towards the top of the food chain as well. So they're very essential in our ecosystem. Because without them, there would be probably more carcasses in a given area. But I just want to provide you guys a little bit of a view as well, just of the coastline up here. It's quite pretty today, very calm. Fortunately, the sun is a bit more covered, so the sand is like not unbearable to walk on barefoot, so that's always nice. But yeah, I mean, I feel like vultures don't always get the attention that they deserve. I guess they're oftentimes a very misunderstood homie. But yeah, they're quite cool to look at, and they kind of give us an old glimpse of some of the birds that existed millions of years ago. So they're like that. They're basically continuing that generation, you know, in terms of the genetics. But, all right, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something of value pertaining to the Black Vulture. And once again, hope you all get to enjoy your Thursday. And once again, Journey on a Journey is outwards. Take care, folks. Enjoy your Thursday. Take care.